Have a listen to this. Have a listen to this.
Now, that kind of talk this week dragged Australia's share market to a two-year low. There are, of course, complex reasons for that.
He was the big spender. The big spender.
Doing the grocery shopping could take a huge chunk out of the family budget.
And that's finance.
Hello and welcome back to Comedian versus Economist. We demystify the world of money and help you, and hopefully me, get a handle on the bigger picture. My name's Adam, and I'm joined, as always, by my older brother and real-life economist, Thomas. Welcome, Thomas. How's it going?
Thanks, Adam. Yeah, no, it's great to be here.
Oh, very good. We are trying a new studio setup today, so hopefully you might have noticed a few little audio issues sneaking in last week. So I think if the audio makes it through this week, it should be crystal clear. But there is a strong chance, given the complexity of what we've cobbled together here, that there'll be no audio at all. So if you're hearing this, congratulations and welcome. We're in the home stretch now of our introductory series where Thomas helps all of us, I think, hopefully, explains to us the world of macroeconomics, the world of money, what makes it tick. We've covered off really the basics in the first few episodes. We had Economics 101 really to get us started. We've covered off things like the economics dashboard. You know, if you're interested in any of that, you can always go back and I would encourage you to go back and start at episode 1. The last couple of weeks, we got into how macroeconomics affects things like the share prices, how macroeconomics affects the property market. And so we're into episode 7, into the home stretch, as I say. And I'm actually really excited about this episode today because it's a topic that's close to my heart. We're talking cash. And Thomas, I want to ask you the question. Is cash dead?
Oh, provocative. Wow, we're just going to jump straight there. Wow. No, it's not dead, but it may be dying.
Yeah. Right.
It's becoming, being replaced by digital currencies, digital versions of money. That's
as in cryptocurrencies, or as in just sort of not paper anymore?
No, just not paper. Cash, what we call hard currency, has been in decline for a while now with the rise of credit cards, and particularly in countries like Australia. It's we're pretty advanced. Pretty much where I live, everywhere I shop has a card reader.
Yeah,
I don't really actually carry cash around anymore.
It's annoying, cash now. For me, I don't like it. I don't like having to carry cash, but there are a few things I still need it for, which just become annoyances in my life. So I played social indoor soccer last night, right? And the cash bag that we have to collect the funds needs cash. And so it's always a stop at the service station on the way to the game to be like, man, I've got to go get $20 out of it, an ATM at a service station. And they're the only ones still that charge the $2.50 fee, So yeah, annoying is what cash has become.
Yeah, that's how they get you. I mean, there are some people who are very alarmed at the death of cash and the push for a cashless society.
There are. I was in Harvey Norman the other day, and this guy was like, I had to print some photos for my kids, and I needed to print like 2 photos. That's all I needed. And I get to the counter, and the guy's like, what was it, like 18 cents? I said, can I pay that with card? And he's like, well, no, because it's 18 cents. And can you not just give it to me for free? Because let's not squabble about 18 cents, right? And he's like, well, no, I can't do that either. And I said, why can't I pay with card? He said, because it's a $2 minimum. And I'm like, well, that kind of breaks the whole model. Like, unless everything can be paid for in cash, then it's already broken. But I also made the comment to him. I'm like, man, I can't wait until cash is gone. And he was like, what? Not me, man. I'm staying with cash forever. And it did get me thinking, I'm not sure that's the guy working behind the counter at Harvey Norman's call, that we're going to stay with cash forever. I don't know. Will we be able to use cash forever?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question. So there's sort of 2 elements. Like, one's the technological side of it. Like, is it ever going to be practical to fully have everyone using digital like versions of the currency, like cards. So, like I've got an uncle who, doesn't have a phone. So for him, paying on a phone or a credit card is not really practical. He's still very reliant on cash. And it's very unlikely, given his age, that he's going to be able to go cashless. That's going to be difficult for him. So there's sort of like a technological barrier there. But that's probably, surmountable in the near term. And if you've got to carry a phone around, you've got to carry cash around. You've got to carry something around. That reality hasn't changed.
I don't understand that argument, though. Like, it's not that hard. Does he not bank? Could he not go into the bank and they could give him... He doesn't have to have a phone. It doesn't have to be like...
He's still using a checkbook.
A checkbook?
So,
for our younger listeners out there, that's a bit of paper where you can write down the promise of some money and give it to someone and then take it into a bank, and then the bank will handle the passing of the money. That's more or less... It
sounds so ridiculous when you put it like that. It's a write down. I promise you some money.
Most places don't accept checks.
Apparently, I had a guy in the our co-working space the other day who works for Square, for the Square Reader company. And he's saying in America, like, people still pay rent with checkbooks.
Really?
Like, he laughed when he got there and said, I don't need a checkbook. But then couldn't pay rent unless he had a checkbook.
Wow. Guess how much money you've got when someone gives you a check? None. You've got absolutely nothing until you go to the bank and the bank validates it and goes, yeah, that's legit. We can now move some money.
Well, this is very interesting because that gets to the heart of what money is. Right. That money is effectively a promise. That, like, this money itself has no intrinsic value. If you melt down the coins, you might get like a fraction of something, some kind of value out of it. But the polymer notes, like, they're effectively worthless outside of a system that supports a shared understanding of what the value of that money is.
Yeah, but that's a much bigger system with much more rigor and control around it than the check system, where someone's just writing some ink on a bit of paper so that they can go and get the money that's in a controlled system.
Well, yeah, but this is that's the point. It's what is the mechanism that enforces that collective belief in the value of the currency, and this is sort of where Bitcoin is interesting, is because Bitcoin has stepped away from the institutions that help anchor the understanding of what money is worth. So typically in the Australian context, that's the government and the Reserve Bank of Australia. They're helping people understand what the value of a $50 note actually is and what can be exchanged for that $50 note. And that's supported by, this sort of social infrastructure. Bitcoin has and the cryptocurrency movement has sort of stepped away from that. So we don't need a centralized body helping us understand what the value is. We'll determine it for ourselves. It can be determined collectively by the people, is sort of the argument that
right.
That
but
goes.
You can still, but it's still a store. It's a store of value, right? That's the thing that I've heard about Bitcoin. It's still a store of value in a sense that it has a price attached to it. But you're saying it's not controlled by the government and whoever else, which is enforcing the value of the store. It's a store of money in the same way that the paper note's a store of money, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Or a check is a store of value.
Or an IOU.
Like, it helps carry... Yeah, or an IOU, or just me just saying I'll pay you $50 later.
Yeah, that'll
promise,
be the day.
I'm getting around to it. It is a promise. So money, like, you can think about money as, I think about it as crystallized labor energy. So you do some work.
Sounds magical.
It is. It's kind of it's a magical
crystallized labor energy. Do you carry it in a sphere in the palm of your hand, like some floating orb? Oh, what you got there, fella? Oh, this is crystallized labor energy that I've harvested from the energy mines in Arbitron 7.
Yeah, I mean, this is it's you're making some good gags, but this is kind of it gets to the essence of what money is. Like, the creation of money was a revolution because it allowed us to carry value through time. That I could go and create some labor then lock the value of that labor down into something that I could then use at a later time. So like if you grew some fresh vegetables, for example, your ability to harvest the value of your labor from growing those fresh vegetables was limited to the life of the vegetables.
Yep.
But when you exchange those vegetables for money, you can now then deploy that value at any time in the future.
Yeah, okay.
So it sort of allowed humanity to sort of like transcend time to a degree.
Using crystallized labor energy. Like we transcended time. This is not a science fiction podcast for those listening at home. This is economics. So it's storing the value. So then it's storing the value and it's enforced by the government. The government's saying it's sort of guaranteed to be worth a certain amount. You've still got things like inflation, which if you're keeping cash under a pillow, then you say it's used to store value over time. That's going to be eroded, presumably, because of inflation, which we covered off in earlier episodes.
I mean, it doesn't have to be governments. I mean, the key point for a money to work, it needs to function like a social construct. It needs everyone to have an understanding of what that money is worth. Now, the government and the RBA can help, that the construction of that social construct and the maintenance of that social construct. So the RBA has an agenda for the stability of the currency, which in practical terms means that inflation doesn't get out of control. Because if inflation got out of control, then if I give you $50 today, you might be like, well, I don't know that this is going to be worth all that much in a year. Okay, no worries, mate.
Hopefully the audio quality is better, but maybe someone's just come around to read Tom's electricity meter. We must be pumping out some heavy duty podcasting at the moment because we've created a spike in the energy market.
Man, no, that's the government, man. They're just trying to shut us down. As soon as you start talking bitcoins, cryptocurrencies, they just
you know what'd solve that? If you gave him some cash, he would have no more questions. I guarantee it. Here's $50, mate. On your way. Nothing to see here. All right. So yeah, okay.
What were we saying? Yeah. Okay. So the RBA is trying to anchor the shared value of it. So like if you got $50, and there's inflation's rampant, you don't know that the $50 is going to be worth $50 a week from now or a month from now. And so your faith in the currency starts to break down and you'll be like, I'm not willing to exchange my labor or my goods or services for this money because I don't know that it's going to be worth what it's supposed to be worth. And so that you need that faith in money. Money only works if everyone has faith in the money. And that faith is generated in our context by the Australian government and by the Reserve Bank of Australia, by the Reserve Bank trying to stay on top of inflation and making sure it has a stable value, and by the government saying like, this is what it's worth, we can enforce that this is legal tender, shops need to accept legal tender, and you have to pay your taxes in this currency.
Right.
And so that guarantees its value. And then everyone just accepts that. You don't need to hear the government making that promise all the time. Most people don't actually even remember that the government is making that promise. And that's what's supporting the currency. They just accept that that's what it is. But it's not until you've lived in a place where a currency is breaking down that you suddenly realize how important that is. And it's why Bitcoin's really interesting, because Bitcoin's saying, well, we don't need that stuff. We can step away from that infrastructure. We don't need a centralized body telling us what the value of the currency is worth. We can collectively determine it. We can decentralize that process. To me, I'm not sure that it actually functions like that. Like, to me, that's a bit of a long bow.
All right. I've got more questions, but we're going to pause there, grab a quick word from our sponsors, and then we'll come back to talk more about cash, what's happening with cash, and Bitcoin. Welcome back to Comedian versus Economist. We're talking cash on the show today. Thomas, is cash dead? You didn't really answer the question, to be honest, before the break.
Ducking and weaving,
as you've tended to do so often throughout this podcast series so far. But we touched a little bit on Bitcoin, but I want to know if cash goes out of society, let's say we could get rid of it, what takes its place? Is it just digital currency? Is it cryptocurrencies? because the big concern for me is if we get rid of cash, there's a whole economy that relies on cash being around. There's a whole swag of people that use cash every day, and that's their preferred method. That the Harvey Norman guy that I mentioned before, it's his preference. He wants to pay for everything in cash. Can we get rid of it? Is it dead?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question about why people prefer cash. Like, they might be just trying to avoid paying tax.
I think that's a fair chance.
And yeah, it's probably a high chance. Probably most people currently just want to avoid paying tax. And, like there's it's a collective decision that we have to make. Like, do we want to continue to support people who don't want to pay tax? Do we want to enable that?
As someone who's not on the receiving side of that transaction, more often than not, it doesn't bother me if we get rid of cash. But I know a lot of people who it would bother. Let's just say that. Not naming names, of course.
Yeah.
But I think what would happen to society if you took it away? If you took away that ability, I don't know. Maybe people are surviving by virtue of the fact that they don't have to pay cash, pay tax. I don't know. Do we want to support that? That's a good question.
That's a good question. I mean, we have tax-free threshold. So, like, if you're really poor and not earning very much, and you're just working in a cash industry, you should be protected to a degree that you don't pay tax until you're earning a particular amount. But if, I went to a knee specialist and they only accepted cash.
A knee specialist?
A knee specialist.
Like a medical professional? Like a
medical profession with 4 people at the counter. Yeah. No, like knee surgery for old people I had to go to the Gold Coast. And they're only accepting cash. And I was a bit like, come on. Seriously? You guys aren't paying tax? Jeez. So
under the table surgery.
Yeah.
You sure you're on the Gold Coast and not somewhere in the Philippines?
Majorca. Yeah. So I don't know. So there is that. And I'm not going to get too angry about it, but I don't think that's for me, that's not a strong reason not to go cash. And I do have some sympathy for the argument that, and it's probably what your mate at Harvey Norman was worried about, is that if all your money's in the bank, that you can get switched off at some point. That's the sort of the phrase that they use, that the government just seizes all your digital assets and then you're cut off from society.
I think he was also worried about the traceability, where if your bank, if your money is all in digital form, then everywhere you go, everywhere you spend is traceable and trackable. So I think he was maybe coming at it from maybe a privacy standpoint as well, and saying if I pay with cash, I can make anonymous transactions all over the place. Nobody knows my buying habits, for example, and that that's really useful to, we've seen it with Facebooks and Googles of the world, where it's proven to be incredibly valuable information to have if you know what people are buying and what they're interested in. So I think that was maybe his other concern.
I think that's legitimate. Yeah, but I think probably most people aren't thinking about it, and I think convenience will win in the end.
Yeah,
like as you're saying, it's kind of a hassle at the moment. Even to sort of have cash around.
Yeah, but so getting back to them, Bitcoin is Bitcoin potentially the replacement for cash in that sense, where it's not traceable if vendors start accepting Bitcoin payments, if you can, pay for things without, anonymously using Bitcoin, then is that the use case for Bitcoin? Yeah,
it could be. I mean, I think that is one of the, it's an argument for Bitcoin. Whether that's enough of an argument for replacing the currency, which, the sort of the Bitcoin proponents say is going to happen. We're going to overturn the global currency and just live off Bitcoin. If that, people wanting privacy of their transactions is enough of a motivation to overcome all the barriers and the hurdles to adoption, I don't see it. I don't have that much faith in it, but it is one of the potential. Well,
I think
pluses.
It's early days. I mean, someone's going to make it easier. Like, I picture this kind of world potentially where everyone's just got like a Bitcoin wallet on their phone, just like their normal wallet, and they're just slinging Bitcoin around, and you go out for dinner with friends, and you're like, that just 0.2 Bitcoins each, thanks, table. So, like, there's technology barriers, I think, at the moment, but but it's very early days in a technology perspective too, isn't it?
Sure. Yeah. No, totally. But it's also, what's to stop PayPal having end-to-end encryption? Like, if that's the only rationale, like.
Well, you're then trusting PayPal to keep that information secure. You're, as far as I know, PayPal should have end-to-end encryption already. It's about it's. I don't want to get into encryption, but if PayPal are not doing that, then there's a strong recommendation for them. But I'm pretty sure they are. So it's not really about the security of the transaction. It's more the privacy and who's looking after it. As soon as PayPal are involved, whether they got end-to-end encryption or not, they know what you're doing. So
someone does.
Yeah. Whereas at the moment, some guy comes around and mows my lawn, I give him $50 or whatever it is. Nobody knows he was here.
He's a ghost.
All right, cool. So, so Bitcoin's probably not going to be the replacement for cash in the short term, but cash is probably not going to go away in the short term either.
I don't imagine it's a short term thing. No. We still need that. There's still enough people, who are reliant on it. It'll just sort of phase out. I mean, we kind of like a 1 and 2 cent coin, like the way that they got phased out. They just stopped being useful. People stopped using them, and eventually, there's a handful of people still using them, and the government just says, "Oh, we'll just phase it out and just deal with a few people being upset about it."
I'd be more than happy for coins to go that route now. I feel like
it's a slippery slope.
Coins. Well, I don't know. Even if they made bring back the $2 note, that's what I'd like. I've got one of these
right.
I've got one of these wallets that's just like a bit of metal that holds some cards. Coins are just annoying. If someone gives me coins, I'm like, what am I going to do with these? I just give them to the kids in exchange for labour. All right. So before we finish up, I did just want to touch on macroeconomics and how that relates to currencies, I suppose, and dive if we could just touch a little bit on currencies and what are we thinking about if we're thinking about investing in currency. I know there's a lot of, say, Forex trading and stuff that goes on, which has always been scary to me. I've seen that and I'm just like, someone mentioned the word leverage and I'm just like, so you could potentially be on the hook for $1 million. I don't know. To me, it put me right off. But anything in particular we're thinking about in terms of investing in currencies?
I think probably go in with your guard up, definitely. Like I don't think currency trading is something I would recommend to people like yourself, for example.
That's okay because we're not here to give any financial advice, so you don't have to worry about recommending anything to anyone. So
the thing about currency trading is you don't invest in currencies, you speculate. So you're not. Currencies don't offer you a return. You just hope that you invest in one side of the currency pair and it goes up relative to the other side, and then you bring the money back and you've made more money. So it's a speculative play. Thing is, I used to work on a foreign exchange trading floor, and so this was one bank, and there were 60 people who just watched the currency market.
Oh.
And try to understand where currency prices were going. And they were trading on the pips. So it's like, so the Aussie dollar is 70.74 US cents or whatever it is. And they would try and use huge leverage and then try and make money on the dollar moving from 70.74 to 70.76.
Yeah, wow.
Or something like that. And, so there's a lot of very smart people, highly trained with sophisticated technology at their fingertips in this market trying to trade it. And so you need to be aware that if you've got it downloaded an app and you're just going to get in on that market, that's who you're going up against.
Yeah, right.
And they are notoriously hard to predict. They are, because they move with so many different sort of factors. Yeah, and the actual the use value of the currency relative to the sort of speculative trading that goes on in the trading floors is sort of about like 10% or something. Like people actually, I need to buy some Aussie coal, so I need some Aussie dollars. Like people who like that account for a very small fraction of day-to-day volumes.
Right. It's mostly just people buying and selling the actual currency to try and make money on the trade. Not
That's right. Last time I looked, I think that's true. So yeah, if you're getting into a market like that where it's a bit of a casino, like you're treating it like a casino because you don't actually have any vested interest in what happens to the currency. You just want to get on the right side of the trade and make some money. So
no, but if you're going into it like any other investment, you might have some like fundamentals. You might be like, well, I'm forecasting, say, Joe Biden winning the US election recently, for example. You're forecasting that to happen, and because of that, you know that his policies align with certain whatevers, and that's likely going to lower the value of the US dollar, for example, relative to Australia. So with some of that information, you might go, well, I'm making this call to buy some currency or to invest in currency with a similar sort of analysis, aren't you, to what you would go into. I mean, I think we should overestimate how much analysis I put into my share buying.
yeah,
in terms, you mentioned it being a casino. I immediately thought to my share portfolio.
Look, I mean, you can do that, and you might get it right. You might, I think it's degrees more difficult. This is just my subjective opinion now, but it's degrees more difficult to pick currency movements reliably than it is to find a good company, invest in a good company.
Yeah, fair enough. And so when we're thinking about currency investments, are we thinking about Bitcoin? Is that a currency, or are we thinking is that more akin to gold, for example, which seems to be the most obvious parallel that we've already got, which is...
So I worked at the Central Bank of Australia, in the Reserve Bank of Australia. I studied game theory at university, and I wanted to understand the crypto space, so I wrote for a
Let's not turn this into a bragging session. I think everyone's...
It's important. I'm just laying out the context here.
Yeah, well, you're laying out a fair bit of context.
Can't help it if...
We get it. You're an economist.
No, but I wanted to understand the crypto space, so I spent a year writing for the crypto, for a crypto investor.
Ah, okay.
All I'm saying is so I'm not just some, like, there's a lot of people go, I don't get crypto. There's Bitcoin's a scam. I don't get it. But so that's not where I'm coming from, but I'm still highly skeptical about cryptos and Bitcoin in particular. And one of the things you get when I got into the space is there's just a flood of garbage, people writing about cryptos who really don't know what they're talking about. And there's just a lot of fluff there. And one of the things that sort of comes out to me is there's a lot of good partial arguments for Bitcoin, but you can't stack partial arguments and make a single good argument. So like Bitcoin is kind of like this sort of thing. It's like some people say, yeah, it's digital gold. It's a store of value, and it's a currency, and it has transactional value. These things are completely different. Just because they're partially a bit of both of those, you can't stack that together and make a single good argument. So does it function like gold? Well, again, like gold rests on a social construct as well. Gold's only valuable because we all agree it's valuable. It does have some industrial use, and Bitcoin doesn't have that going for it. But again, gold rests on a social construct. But it's millennia old now, that social construct. Bitcoin, does it rest on a social contract? It's building one. How durable is it? I don't know. Like, it's not clear to me.
And is that why we've seen the volatility in the Bitcoin? Because it doesn't have any of that underlying historical, you mentioned the constructs around gold and whatever. Is that why? But gold's been volatile too.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, volatility is tricky to talk about with currencies because it's always in a pair. So, like if Bitcoin appreciates relative to the US dollar, is it that Bitcoin's gone up, or is it because the US dollar has gone down? And so with volatility, like is it all over the place? Is that because Bitcoin's all over the place, or is it because the US dollar's all over the place because there's money printing and all this sort of stuff? I
think it's fair to say it's because Bitcoin's all over the place.
That would be my guess too, actually.
Because unless the US dollar happened to increase by 400% when I wasn't watching. Or decrease, sorry. But yeah, then I think Bitcoin's definitely the one that's swinging around like a
it's a bit of a stretch to say to me that it's digital gold. But the thing about like actual gold is we don't use it like a currency. You don't go and actually buy stuff with it. And a lot of people, in the same breath, say that the value of Bitcoin is that one day we'll all be using Bitcoin as a transactional currency. And so it's a bit like, well, which is it? Is it a store of value like gold, or is it a transactional currency like the dollar? And just because it can possibly be both in some imagined universe doesn't mean that that's a solid argument for it.
All right, watch this space, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the thing about Bitcoin is that it does, like all money, is it does come down to a consensus. It's a social construct. It's only value what we all collectively think it's worth. And then, you're talking about, a consensus reality, a shared consensus reality. So could Bitcoin become the global dominant currency? I don't see a path towards it, but it's conceivable. If we all just decide Bitcoin's the thing, it's conceivable.
Very good. All right, well, that does us for this week. If you want to hear more of Thomas's credentials and some of his other qualifications, you can tune in next week. I'm sure he's going to share more.
I'm going to need my own podcast for that, I think.
Once again, thanks for listening. We are coming to the end, as I mentioned, of this introductory series that we're doing to macroeconomics. So I think we've got one more to go. We're going to talk about modern monetary theory, which I'm struggling to get my head around already just hearing the title. And then we're going to rip into some more general stuff and more topical stuff. So really appreciate you guys tuning in out there. Thanks for all your support. Of course, you can always email us questions. You can send an email to cve@equitymates.com. Also check out the website at equitymates.com/CVE. Shout out again to our good friends over at Equity Mates for all their support. You should definitely go and check out their podcast too. If you're enjoying this one, head over to wherever you get your podcasts and check out Equity Mates Investing Podcast. If you like the show, be sure to leave us a review, give us a rating, and we'll see you again next week.
See you all.
This podcast is a production of Equity Mates Media. Any views expressed by the podcast hosts or any guest are their own and do not represent the views of Equity Mates Media or any other employer or associated organisation. Always remember, all information contained in this podcast is for education and entertainment purposes only. It is not intended as a substitute for professional, financial, legal, or tax advice. The hosts of this podcast are not financial professionals and are not aware of your personal financial circumstances. Before making any financial decisions, you should read the product disclosure statement and, if necessary, consult a licensed financial professional. For more information, head to our disclaimer page where you can find resources to search for a registered financial professional near you.